Electric is the future. But is the future any good?
Future's now, old man.
Today we'll look at electric motorcycles and see how they stack up against gas.
Now first let's get all our ducks in a row and define what a full-size electric motorcycle is and isn't. In my simple mind, there are roughly three main categories. Types of electric motorcycles. Urban commuters, so anything from bicycles with electric assist to fully electric scooters to luggage you can ride to your connecting gate at the airport. The speed and capability would be more closely related to something like a 50cc motor. The denser the city, the more they make sense. The quickness of the electric motor acceleration might be plenty of power for a lot of commuters though, depending on their route. Hilly San Francisco might shoot through your battery, but a flatter Manhattan might be a breeze. On the manufacturer side, there is currently an insane amount of new electric urban commuters from many different companies, with more coming out all the time. It's a proverbial gold rush to electrified transportation. It's a relatively low barrier to entry, which is why it's so popular, with people buying lots of e-bikes ranging from bicycles with a juice pack up to moped-sized vehicles weighing a couple hundred pounds. Like Segway's e-moped C80, $2,500, 20 miles per hour and a 50-mile range. Or Chinese brand CSC's City Slicker. I could see how if your commute was within range, this $2,500 electric motorcycle would make a lot of sense. But depending on what you need it for, a 50cc engine just might not cut it. Dirt bikes. Depending on how far you plan to go or how fast you want to go, electric dirt bikes might also make perfect sense. Normally you could stick to relatively low speeds, which would give you more range. If using strictly as an off-road toy, you may even be transporting the bike out to the trails, in which case, even better. And no engine noise in nature is a no-brainer. Full-sized electric motorcycles. These would be the motorcycles which can compete with mid to large displacement motorcycles, 500cc and up, in terms of performance and practicality. This is where the current technology begins to struggle a bit compared to gas bikes, in my opinion. These are the types of juice boxes that will be our topic for discussion today. Now, at this point, we all know about Tesla and the new crop of electric cars taking over the world. Autopilot lets you sip your espresso with one hand while you pet your golden doodle with the other. And once you reach your destination, the dog mode will keep them refrigerated at the correct temperature while they enjoy a classical concerto. And that's just fine and dandy, but what about electric motorcycles? Is there the same amount of appeal? Well, in terms of comfort and automation, electric motorcycles have none of these.
In terms of money, we have no money.
With a motorcycle, your chauffeur and spa-like experience is gone. Aside from the time Honda put actual air conditioning on the Goldwing, there's zero promise of comfort or assistance. But EV Gang knows there's another big reason to love electrification.
Monster torque, baby.
These vacuum cleaners are
fast as boy.
Okay, so what if we apply that face-melting quickness to electric motorcycles? Maybe that sweet, sweet electricity can really tron up the scene here. I mean, hey, Pikes Peak Hill Climb Race was won by an electric motorcycle nearly 10 years ago now. And there's a Moto E League for electric motorcycles, so they've been working on this stuff. So how does the performance stack up? Let's take a look at the pros and cons of full-size electric motorcycles and assign some subjective scoring. Here's our test bike, and one of the most popular electric motorcycles on the market, the Zero SRS. Prices start at an eye-watering 20,000 clams. Zero claims 110 horsepower and 140 pound-feet of torque to scoot this 505-pound machine around town, which is plenty enough power to get around at its claimed 161 miles at in-town speeds, or 82 miles of range at 70 miles per hour. With no DC fast charging options, a 100% charge will take about 90 minutes. Pros. Super fun and easy to ride. It's a genuine good time cracking open the throttle as your land speeder beneath you whirs to blurring speeds quickly. Jumping off the line is hilariously easy. Just mash the throttle and kind of like riding a roided out scooter. There's no clutch to stall, and there are a lot of nanny features to modulate power delivery for you. For urban assault, jumping from light to light, I don't think there's an easier or more fun way to do it. It's especially great if you can lane filter your way to the front to beat traffic. 1.2 electric. No vibration or motor sounds. Riding an electric motorcycle is kind of a weird experience. It doesn't feel like it's on, and then you just hear the whirl of the motor. It's not a great sound either, just kind of a building, whizzing sound like a treadmill. But it does give you the advantage of hearing more of nature, potential hazard, and also the grip on your tires. But without the ability to be heard before you're seen by revving your engine, moving through traffic can become slightly more dangerous. And how do you convey the official red light challenge to someone without being able to rev a sweet explosion machine? I will say it does feel awesome to sneak around like a ninja though. Unlike a Kawasaki Ninja Superbike, which will have you disturbing the peace in the next county, this silent assassin will have you already gone before anyone in traffic even notices you. 0.2 electric. Cheaper energy, fuel, cost per mile. Well, let's take a look at the cost versus gas bikes. As you can see here, the Zero is double the cost of a comparable naked bike, a pretty solid one, MT-09. But let's break it down by cost per mile. So if you see here, average electrical cost, 11 cents a kilowatt hour. Multiply that times the 14.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, and you're looking at $1.58 for the claimed 123 miles. When you break that down, it's about 1.3 cents a mile. When you look at Yamaha's MT-09, 57 miles per gallon claimed, and at $4.50 a gallon of premium fuel, you're looking at 7.9 cents per mile. When we multiply this out, let's say average of 10,000 miles per year, that's a difference of about $650 a year. So if you only ride half of that amount, 5,000 a year, cut it in half, depending on your budget. Might be a very small amount, might be a large amount. If you're a delivery driver in the city, this might be a substantial amount if you're just putting mile after mile on the motorcycle. If you only ride a few thousand miles a year, you have multiple bikes, maybe a difference of a few $100 really isn't worth it. Something to consider. +2. Less regular maintenance. Maintenance on an electric motorcycle is basically non-existent. Aside from the obvious shared maintenance items of tires, brake parts, and suspension, there are less systems to maintain. No oil or oil filter, no valve clearance checks, no spark plugs, no air filter, radiator fluid, no clutch parts or gearbox, no exhaust or emissions equipment. One major caveat to this is the battery itself. Having to buy a new battery every 8 years or so may negate this savings, but hell, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. And for now, let's say another 0.2 electric. Motor braking and regen on deceleration. This is unique and helpful. Much like you would downshift to slow yourself on a motorcycle, here we usually have a single speed motor which can not only regenerate the power, but can more easily modulate the engine braking. This can be very useful on steep downhills, and it's much easier to control than gas engine braking. 0.2 electric. No dependency on big oil. Electricity can be a cheap power source, especially if you have your own solar or natural power sources. Not worrying about the pump is great when gas skyrockets, but not so great if the entire grid goes down. 0.5 electric. Cons. Heavy. To get the performance and range you need to compete with a gas motorcycle, an electric motorcycle just simply has to weigh more at the moment than its combustion competition. With electric cars, the weight is carried down very low and across 4 non-leaning tires, so it doesn't feel as portly. The most popular full-sized electric motorcycles all weigh over 500 pounds. 518 pounds for the Zero SRS, 568 pounds for the Energica Ego, and 562 pounds for Harley's Livewire 1. These weights are on par with sport tours, big adventure bikes, or the biggest sport bikes such as Ninja 1000 SX at 513 pounds, Suzuki's Hayabusa at 582, or the BMW R1250 GS at 548. Not to say that these bikes aren't performance machines, but the idea of having a curve carving 400-pound razor is a pipe dream at this point. Let's put this into perspective. Now, when we look at the top tiers of electric racing, the Moto E League is most closely similar to the Moto 3 division. Moto 3 bikes are 250cc single-cylinder, 60 horsepower, lightweight bikes with narrower tires. 150 horsepower on the electric bikes are no match for the 60 horsepower lightweight Moto 3 division. And remember that electric motorcycles can only race for about 15 minutes, whereas MotoGP races typically last near 45 minutes. So maybe don't hit the concession stands for a tall boy or you might miss the whole race. I feel like this is a big win for gas. +2. Range. If you've ever ridden an electric motorcycle, you know that the range anxiety is real when you're out and you're watching that little number on the screen drop further and faster. Think about being on the highway and needing a gas station. There's a level of standardization and availability with gas that's just taken for granted. And really, why would we want to revert to slower and more difficult? You can't go back to meatloaf once you've been living on filet mignon. Take, for example, my first ride with the Zero. Picking up the bike at a rental spot near LAX and riding to Long Beach, I almost couldn't believe my eyes as I watched the battery meter drain. Passing fast-moving traffic at what we will call a spicy pace, my 22-mile ride drained my battery from 96% to 46%, a 50% drop in about 20 minutes of riding. In order to be competitive on distance at normal highway speeds and let's say double the range to 250 miles between Phillips, we would need to add a larger battery pack. An Energica battery pack weighs about 100 kilograms or 220 pounds by itself. So to double the range to 250 miles, the bike would need to jump to about 800 pounds. This isn't unheard of. It is similar to large Harleys or large Tourers like the Honda Goldwing. Could we be seeing a proper electric Tourer in the future? It's an idea. But for now, big points to gas, +2. Long recharge times. Firstly, your motorcycle needs to have the ability to DC fast charge to be even remotely competitive, which many don't have yet. Next, you need reliable and timely access to DC fast charging stations. Here's a map of non-Tesla DC fast charging stations in California. Here's a YouTuber in New Zealand sharing his experiences with Energica.
I ride for about an hour and then stop for 15 minutes to charge. Seems the best way to do it is to unplug at 80. Here's everywhere I charged, how much time I spent at each stop, and how much they all cost. It cost me $44 to do the trip, and I spent 2.5 hours charging.
Let's break that down. $44 New Zealand is about $30 US. His 441-mile trip on, let's say, something like a $13,000 Ninja 1000 SX would take about 11 gallons of gas at 40 miles per gallon. At $4 a gallon, that would be about $44 US, a difference of $14 for the trip. Pretty good savings there. When you calculate time, here's where the disparity lies. With a 5-gallon fuel tank on the Ninja, you can expect 2 gas station stops, and at an average pump speed of 10 gallons per minute, you're looking at a 30-second refill time after probably 200 miles or so, about 3 hours at highway speed. So electric is at least 30 times longer than gas station Phillips, and you'll be stopping at least 3 times more. Another big advantage for gas, +2. Now let's look at the performance specs versus gas. Here are the figures for the Zero SR platform. As measured by Cycle World, 100 horsepower, 146 foot-pounds, quarter mile in 11.83 seconds, and 0 to 60 in 3.7. On the MT-09, similar numbers for horsepower, 107 at the wheel. Torque is less than half of that of the Zero, and as you can see, it comes in much later at about 7,000 RPMs. Quarter mile actually quicker than the electric by about a half second. 0 to 60, it beats it in this category also. Point to gas. Sticker price. As you saw earlier with the MT-09 comparison, you could own 2 or even 3 types of pretty decent gas motorcycles for the price of one electric. We'll call it an early adopter fee. Point to gas. Reliance on the grid. Unless you've got a big enough solar setup or your own wind farm in the backyard, you're probably dependent on big electric to fill your battery pack. When natural disasters or even just intense heat occurs, we've seen some problems with major metropolitan electrical supplies. Planned rolling blackouts might leave you stranded when you need electric the most. Half a point to gas. Real estate. Where to park if you need to charge a home and you don't have a garage or an outlet. Spots are being added at a lot of places, but many may not currently be able to support home plugins, leaving them reliant on local infrastructure. Many will have a charge spot easily accessible for the night though, so half a point to gas. Startups. This space contains so many brand new companies that have yet to be proven and who may not even be around in a few years.
Which makes me wonder what the hell you're investigating me for.
Even Tesla went through periods on the brink of bankruptcy. Startups can quickly find themselves in trouble, so there's a risk you may not have support in a few years. This is something you really don't think about happening with major automotive manufacturers today because of the sheer size and infrastructure. So for some one-off company with a snazzy idea and a half-working prototype, I probably wouldn't bet the farm. Final point to gas. So after tabulating my completely made-up numbers, which, much like our monetary system, are not backed by anything, we can see that electric motorcycles are close or better in some ways, but at the peak of the internal combustion engine era, we just can't ignore how good we have it. Final thoughts. We've had 100 years to improve on gas motorcycles, and we're only in the infancy of electric motorcycles. The sky's the limit. The improvements will be exponential. Right now, though, is it worth it to get a full-size electric motorcycle? I think that if you live in a dense urban environment and you're going to use it for mostly commuting and some recreational fun at medium speeds, I think it's a solid choice. I think when you start to go further and faster, especially for longer, gas is still where it's at. For full-size electric motorcycles, weight, range, recharge time, agility, and top speed are just too much to overlook in the favor of being a first adopter. But to each their own. If you like the benefits electric offers, juice it up. Maybe in 5 to 10 years, full-size electric motorcycles will start to eclipse gas bikes. But
it is not this day!
What do you think about electric motorcycles? Turn your caps lock on and tell me how I'm wrong in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Check us out on the web at brinksymoto.com. Thank you very much.